My name is Nick Gebelt. I'm a bankruptcy attorney practicing here in Whittier, California, and I regularly receive questions from clients, potential clients, and also fellow attorneys asking about various aspects of bankruptcy law. So I'm making this series of videos to address questions that I've received. One of those questions has to do with Chapter 7 bankruptcy, and in fact it's a somewhat complicated question. So rather than state the question, I'm going to state the answer, which I think will help in understanding what the question's all about. In Chapter 7 bankruptcy, the debts are just wiped out in one fell swoop. You don't pay anything at all. So from the creditor's perspective, that's a pretty heavy hit. And as a result, there are some limitations to make sure that the people who get Chapter 7 relief really are deserving. One limitation is getting in the door in the first place, and in a previous video I talked about the two-part test that we use to determine Chapter 7 eligibility. In this video what I'm going to talk about is another limitation, and that is on what you get to keep. You get to keep some stuff, but there's always the potential to lose possessions in a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Making this a little bit more precise, one of the things we do in a Chapter 7 bankruptcy is list everything that you own, even down to the clothes on your body. And everything you own gets divided into two categories, exempt and non-exempt. Everything that's exempt, that's yours to keep, no questions asked. The U.S. doesn't want people just tossed naked out in the streets. And then anything above those limits goes into the non-exempt pile. And anything that's non-exempt, the Chapter 7 trustee assigned to the case takes and liquidates and distributes the proceeds to your creditors on some sort of a pro rata basis according to certain priority rules listed in the Bankruptcy Code. Alright, so the natural question is, how can I tell if something's exempt or non-exempt? The Bankruptcy Code has an exemption table, and it's federal law, but it permits the states, if they want to use their own state tables. California is unique among the states in that we have two tables. One is for homeowners with equity, the other is for everybody else. Now, if you have a home with equity and it has to be your primary residence, then of course we'd use the homeowners table. But if you can, it's actually more attractive to use that renters table. That would be, of course, if you either had a home with no equity or you were a renter. So, how does this work? Well, we're going to try and put everything you own into these categories. And once you choose a table, you have to stick with it. If you have a home with equity in it, then we would of course use the homeowners table. So let's take a look at that table for a second. In that table there's a list of various categories of possessions. Some categories have dollar limits, others have no dollar limits. A couple of no dollar limit categories, retirement funds. If you have retirement funds, they're 100% exempted. You don't have to worry about them. Another no dollar limit category is household goods and furnishings. You get to keep your furniture, your appliances, your clothing without any dollar limit. A couple of dollar limit categories that are very important to people. Number one, your motor vehicle. You only, in that homeowners table, you only get $2,900 worth of exempting power. So there is always the potential to lose a car, and that sometimes leads people to choose filing under a different chapter, such as Chapter 13. Another dollar limit category is your house, the equity that you have in your house. And remember, equity is market value of the house minus the encumbrances, mortgages, that sort of stuff. If you are either over 65 or handicapped or over 55 with a limited income that can be made precise, then your equity exemption amount is $175,000. If you are none of those three, but you do have somebody living with you that doesn't have an ownership interest in the house, typically a child, then your equity exemption amounts $100,000. And if you don't fall into any of the categories I've just described, then it's $75,000. What that means is, if you've got more equity than we can exempt, the Chapter 7 trustee will seize the house and sell it. The trustee will pay off all encumbrances against the title, mortgages, and the like, will write you a check for your equity exemption amount, and then will use the residual to pay your creditors. So if you've got too much equity, that could suggest maybe it's worth it to file under a different chapter because you get to keep everything, the trade-off being there's a payment plan that you have to enter. All right, so that's the renter's table, the homeowner's table. The renter's table is similar. The difference here is, well, there are a couple of differences. One, you get $5,100 in exempting on motor vehicles rather than just the $2,900. And in lieu of that equity exemption amount, you get a wild card exemption, which gives you an additional $26,925 worth of exempting power that you get to use as you see fit to supplement other categories or to just protect something that doesn't seem to fit into a category. So that's for stuff like stocks, bonds, cash, money in the bank. Those we typically need to use the wild card. I've scratched the surface. There's a lot to the exemption process, so if you have questions, give me a call. I'd be delighted to chat. Thanks for watching, and I wish you a pleasant day.